She's one of my all-time favorites.
Okay, thank you. Welcome and good morning to our October 17, 2022 strategic planning meeting. Let the record reflect that all three commissions are present. Our executive management team, Scott Simmons will be joining us here shortly, we hope. But we are going to go ahead and get started. It is 9:03, so we will start with Lori Markham from Shrek.
Thank you for letting me come today and share with you the good things that we're doing at Shrek. We are just a little over 3 years old now, so I'm sure you guys who all got to participate in that remember what it was like to get our agency up and running. And I just want to talk about the success that we've had and give you an update on where we're at and where we're going. So for kind of your own knowledge base, our call volume has gone up, increased quite a bit in the year 2020 and continued upwards in 2021. We are seeing about the same amount of calls for 2022 that we saw in 2021. So people are still using our system for 911 as well as crime check, and they're using it very well. We are experiencing kind of the same struggles that every agency is experiencing nationwide and what you guys are experiencing here at the county, which is short staffing. But we are still managing to provide the same level of service that we have always provided, even with our minimal staffing at the time right now. So we continue to look forward and look to hire more people. If you have friends that are looking for a good job, we're a great place to work. So we encourage them to come work for us. We are there for 20 agencies, and actually 19 right now, but on November 1st, we will be at 20 agencies with Spokane Fire Department joining our agency. So I'll go into a little bit of what that is. We were approached this last summer by the city of Spokane asking if there was any way we could take on what they refer to as FireCom. So they are attempting to themselves of that dispatch service and devote those funds to other places, and realize that joining our model, now that they have kind of the proof that our ratings are good, our service provided is the same if not better than what they're providing, and that there's a cost savings if they were to join our agency, they approached us for joining. The board was very open to allowing that. We said, okay, probably January 1st would be the best for us, so that way we can budget appropriately and prepare ourselves for that. The governor pulled back his mandate on COVID, and unfortunately that had an impact on our timeline. A lot of the staff that have been helping out with the city's fire dispatch at FireCom were accommodated firefighters that are now eligible to go back into the stations on November 1st. So they approached us and asked us if we would be willing to take on SFD a little bit sooner, and we said yes with a condition. Additionally, a few months ago, Kim is my deputy director, and she sits as the area coordinator for Washington State for the 911 system, and she has been meeting a lot with different directors around the state and kind of talking to them about how they do business, sharing ideas. And one of the things that we learned is that we provide a service to Spokane Police Department as a secondary PSAP that is far above and beyond what we should have been doing for them all this time. Especially without an interlocal agreement in place that says, hey, we're going to take on this liability for you, and without any sort of a cost recoup for us. Everyone else that's in our model pays into the agency as a model fee. So including the sheriff's office, all the fire departments, they pay a user fee model. And basically Spokane Police Department have been getting a service of triaging calls for free. We are responsible as the primary PSAP in this county to take the calls and to make sure that the call comes into 911, that there's a system to triage that call on, and that it gets sent to the appropriate place to be triaged. We notified in May Chief Meidel and City Administrator Perkins that was a service we could no longer do for free for them. If they wanted to continue on, there would be a price fee for them, and an ILA would need to be in place that stated that we would be taking on that responsibility and liability for them. If they chose not to do that and wanted to continue on with those services themselves, then we would treat them as a true secondary PSAPs, much like Spokane Fire Department and Cheney, and we would transfer those calls to them. We did not hear back from them on our deadline that was also extended 2 weeks. And so we notified them in August that we would no longer be taking those calls for them. And as of January 1st, they would need to take on those calls, and we would transfer that to them. With the speeding up of Spokane Fire Department needing assistance, we, as a board, the board basically said to them, hey, we can't do both. You guys have to decide what you want to do. Our staffing will not allow us to take on the additional 150 to 200 calls for the City of Spokane Fire Department a day and continue to do SPD, so you have to decide what you want to do. The City of Spokane Fire Department made the decision that they needed it more with the loss of their staff. So on November 1st, we will transition and we will begin taking Spokane Fire Department's calls, and we will start to send Spokane Police Department's calls to them for triage. Anything to add to that, Scott? Okay. All right.
Is that going to change the level of service for City of Spokane?
It might. It depends on what their training looks like and what their staffing model will be on that date. We have offered as much as we can to assist them without burdening our staff. But at this time, we gave them several months to kind of make a decision, and we couldn't wait anymore, so we had to move forward.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. The reason Spokane Fire Department wanted to really look at our agency and join our agency is all the good things that we have done since our inception in 2019. So a couple of numbers for you. In August of 2020, we went live with what we call EMD, Emergency Medical Dispatch, which is eliminating that transfer from you call into 911. If it's a medical call, we transfer you to a fire department personnel, and they're the ones that triage that call. We determined that we were losing valuable seconds, especially when it came to medical calls. And so we started the EMD program on our side of the house with the 911 call receivers for our firefighting agencies. In November, between August 20th and November 20th, 27% of our calls were non-compliant, meaning that we weren't following the nationally recognized way of doing that. From June 22nd to August 22nd, it's at 10% is non-compliant, which there's an expectation that there will be about 7% of our calls will be non-compliant, meaning that something happened with the call that we either went down a different path than we should have, or it just didn't provide enough information to do that. If we reach 7%, we can be an accredited center with Priority Dispatch, which is the nationally recognized emergency medical program. So we are 3% away from reaching that goal, and we are working diligently to get that. That accreditation is very beneficial to our community. It's very beneficial to us as an agency because it says that we're doing things and we're doing it the right way. Additionally, our hands to chest time, which is one of the key parts that we always want to look at for CPR, in year one was at 71 seconds. It took us 71 seconds from the time the call came in to realizing that we needed to start CPR. Every minute that somebody doesn't have CPR being administered to them is about 10% decline for them. So we weren't hitting the mark that we wanted to. In year two, we were at 55 seconds. So we knocked that down quite a bit. So that's, the benchmark is about 120 seconds. So we are beyond meeting that, which is great. And that actually helped contribute to Spokane Valley Fire Department's recent community, I think it's Heart Safe Community Award that they got, is because of the work that they do out in the field, but additionally because of what we've been able to change and provide for them on the call receiving side. Another huge asset that we have been able to provide our firefighting agencies is our Washington State Ratings Bureau, basically the insurance scores for fire departments. I was a part of the Combined Communications Center Fire Dispatch for 10 years before I transitioned into SHREC, and our rating was always fairly low, which meant that we didn't help out our fire partners when it came to trying to get that better score for their communities. The higher your score is, the worse your work is, the lower it is, the better. We were at 88 with the Combined Communications Center out of 100, and we are now at 18. So 18 out of 100, we basically shaved off 70 points. We are the second best in the Washington State area. So basically Snohomish, we're out to get Snohomish now because we want to be number one. But Snohomish is number one, and we are second in the state for our insurance rating. What that does for our partners is it, for both businesses and residential, it'll lower that insurance rate for them. It also allows for the fire departments to kind of get grants, things like that they're looking to receive. So that was a huge win for us this year, and we're very proud of the work that we've done with that. Additionally, as you guys recall, we have allowed for Fairchild Air Force Base to become their own primary PSAP, which is a huge benefit to them. Originally, we received those calls, determined it wasn't us, and we would send them out to the base, or folks on the base had to dial a 10-digit phone number to try to get help. We don't dispatch for Fairchild. We don't have anything to do with them. They're their own world and community, and so allowing them to do that has been extremely helpful for them. And it was quite a task to get through all the signatures and all the bureaucracy that comes with that. So, anything I'm missing?
I don't think so.
Anything you want me to cover that I didn't cover, Scott?
No, maybe give an example on the ratings bureau, like Cheney.
Sure.
So Cheney had a really good experience with that.
They did. Cheney was, we actually received 2 emails from our fire chiefs that are users of us that wanted to let us know what the benefit was to them. And Cheney was a great example. They had a pretty high score. It was heading towards, I believe, a high 5 or closer to a 6. Because of the work that we did and being able to apply that, and some of the work that they did, they're at a lower 4, almost at a 3. And that is a significant change for them and a significant benefit to them. Spokane Valley, also Valley Fire, they watch that score and they work very hard to make sure that they maintain good ratings. And Chief Soto from Spokane Valley also let us know that had a huge impact for them.
So that is a significant issue, because for those insurance companies in this market that use the Washington Survey and Rating Bureau to establish their rates, as the rate goes down for the agency, the insurance cost to our taxpayers also goes down.
Right.
So you're not only providing a better service, but you're also contributing to the reduction in the insurance cost for their property and stuff. So kudos. I mean, your performance is outpacing expectations, and thanks for your leadership to be able to make that happen. It's unfortunate the city took such a long time to realize your quality, but I'm glad that they're on board now. I want to raise a different issue, just to kind of give you a heads up.
Sure.
Not this weekend, but the previous last weekend, I was over in Seattle to a national conference. And on King 5 News, evening news, they were reporting that criminals that were evading the police were now calling 911 and reporting that they're being followed by a police officer. And the criminals were actually stating, according to House Bill 1054, these police officers cannot follow me. Please notify the police officer to desist and get off of my tail. And they had the recording of the criminals, or the recording of the violators that they played. And on one of the recordings, you could actually hear a female voice in the background yelling that she's being abducted. But yet, because there was no firsthand knowledge of that, the police officer could not pursue. And so I don't know if that has started to happen here, but at some point, it probably will. So my point is to give you a heads up about how to respond to this. I couldn't believe that I was hearing. They actually played the recordings of the criminals calling to ask the police to get off their tail. Unbelievable what the legislature has done to this state. So anyway.
The sheriff's office, their Facebook page, they shared that video. I saw it on there too.
Unbelievable. But thanks for what you're doing. Talk about a home run. You guys hit it out of the park.
We're doing good things. We're very proud of our employees and their hard work. We're one of the few centers around the United States that didn't have to shut down at any point during COVID. Our employees pushed through, and I was terrified of the day that they couldn't do that. So I was very grateful that they kept going and kept putting the citizens and responders up first. So they've done a really good job, and we're very proud of the work that they've done, and it's been a lot on them. So
terrific.
So with the city, so the fire department's coming over, city police are not. Are they looking in the future to do that, or?
You know, I'm not sure. We haven't had discussions down that path at this time. I think that there's an interest from the city administration, but I don't know if the police is on board, the police group is on board with that just yet. One of the things that I can say as we're looking at our budget and getting ready to approve our budget in November for 2023 is that the cost savings for the fire services because of SFD joining is going to be pretty impressive for everyone. It's going to bring everybody's costs down, which means that more of their taxpayer dollars can be used to go back into their communities. So, and the city of Spokane will also be receiving that same type of a discount, I guess, for that. So I don't know if maybe after some time and some looking at what they're paying and what they've got going and looking at the service that we provide, if that's something that they want to participate in.
And so how does this, and Scott, you might know, affect the new House bill where the city is going to get a proportionate share of the communications tax that goes back to them, but then it's got to come back to pay for the services here for fire. How's all that going to affect?
It's still a little bit unclear on how it's going to affect. What we do know, and I'll just say, being on this board for the last year and a half, it's a very engaged board with the public safety groups, with the sheriff's department, the fire districts. The team has done incredible work, and even in spite of some difficulties with staffing, which they're not unique there. We have the same things that the county. Every business has the same things with being short-staffed in various places, and yet they continue to deliver excellent service for our community. And they've proved the model. They've demonstrated that a regional emergency communications is the best solution for our community. It provides excellent use of the taxpayer dollars. It provides efficiencies that you can gain when you have the economies that we have with the call volume and the staffing. With, if I'm not mistaken, with Spokane Fire Department, if they were fully staffed on dispatch, they'd have 18 dispatchers. You can quickly do the math. 18 dispatchers at loaded salaries and benefits are well over $2 million. I think they're going to be just over $1 million in user fees on this, so it's a significant savings for them. On the House Bill 1155, the way the legislature crafted that is that it allows for cities. There's different population thresholds for counties and cities, but essentially the city of Spokane, if they're providing emergency communications services, they can opt to get a percentage of the 1/10. It's not stipulated in the legislation how to calculate that. We've pointed out to the city that all of the 1/10 dollars that are subject to apportionment today within the statutory guidelines are based on populations. And so we've presented to the city that their percentage would be based on population. They've angled for different calculations. We've kind of settled on a 45% allocation to them. The key is going to be if the city continues to opt to stay with SHREC, and it's their choice. They can opt to stay with SHREC, or they can go out and take these dollars and build their own communication system, which would be extremely expensive for their taxpayers and for their residents. But if they stay with SHREC, then they will have to be paying for that service through SHREC. And from the numbers that Lori and her team have been able to come up with is 45% of the 1/10 that would go to the city would be less than what they'll actually have to pay for the service. So they're going to put their residents in a situation where it's going to be they're going to have a cost increase. So they're going to save on fire dispatch. They're going to be paying more to take the apportionment out. So that's their decision. The administration is not on board with that. They want to stay with SHREC. Their council wants to move and have their apportionment come back to them. So it's going to be, I think it's going to be a higher cost for their community to do this. So, but we're still working with the city of Spokane to determine how an ILA comes together for determining that cost apportionment as well as the cost that they'd have to pay to SHREC going forward.
And just for reference, the two main services that we provide for that 1/10 money are Crime Check and the radio system. So those are fairly expensive things that are provided to City of Spokane at this point, just from that tax-paying benefit. So there's not a whole lot left over once that's taken care of.
And that's different than what you're saying, you were covering costs for the police department.
Correct. That was being covered by 911 excise tax as well as user fees. So the county was supplementing the city.
Yeah.
But the other piece I want to point out too is with the way Shrek has all their various funding that comes in through excise tax, user fees, and through the 1/10, they've been able to demonstrate, again, economies of scale by managing a large call volume with the group, or the team that does this. And from that, they've been able to bring user fees down for all the agencies. They have, I'm trying to remember, how many agencies do you provide services for today?
19 today and 20 on November 1st.
Yep.
So.
And there's only one after fire dispatch that will not be provided. That'll be Spokane Police Department.
And Cheney.
And Gene.
And she, that's right, they do their own dispatch, yep.
Cheney
But
PD.
for the entire county, 95% of emergency communications Shrek provides for them, so.
That leads me into kind of my last topic, which is a few years ago, we put together our strategic plan for Shrek for the next few years. And we're very much a startup, even though we've been around for a long time. A lot of what we're doing is looking to the future on what we want to be and how to, be good stewards of our taxpayer dollars. One of the things that came to light in that discussion was that we are definitely outgrowing our facility that we're currently in. There's two things with that. Number one, it's not big enough for us, and it's divided up into several different rooms when we're trying to be a full center. So that's provided a little bit of cultural struggles for us in trying to get people to have a one agency mindset. But additionally, it is on City of Spokane property, and the City of Spokane claims that it's their facility. So there's not a lot that we can do to kind of work in that facility based on who's responsible for any sort of changes to that facility. So one of the items that we determined that we definitely were going to need is a new facility for our agency that will be big enough for us today, but also allow us to grow into it as we become bigger and hopefully better for our community. So we hired an engineering company to help us determine what our space needed was, and kind of give us an idea of the things that we need to consider for a robust 911 center. And in that discussion, Sheriff Knezevich mentioned that they are putting together this big, beautiful training center out in the West Plains in conjunction with Air Force Base, and suggested that we consider locating our public safety 911 center to that same piece of property. So we had our engineering company just take a look at those 15 acres to determine if there was room for us there and if it was a safe place for us to go. There's a lot of things when we have to consider that. And really the only concern that came out for us was the proximity to the airport and having radio towers and making sure that it's within a safe distance so that can occur. So their recommendation was that would be a good place for us to put a facility. We're in the early stages of those discussions. It's something that we're just kind of starting to look at. I've met several different times with Chief Ellis, who's been heading that project, and just asking him about, if there's cost savings for both the Sheriff's Department, if we participate, if there's things that we can do together, and what that might look like. So it's a discussion. It's definitely something that will come to you if it becomes a serious path going forward, to determine if that's something that you guys will allow for us to also co-locate on that property.
Do you have any idea what the tallest tower would be that you would have?
I don't have an idea on the exact height of it, but AdCom, which is the company that we use, they determined, especially with everything else that's going out there, that we wouldn't have anything that would be in the way. Radio interference wouldn't be a concern. My biggest concern would be noise, especially if we're in a direct flight path, what that noise would be like in that center. So looking at what we need to do to mitigate that sound. So
Yeah, because you'll be right under the flight pattern for the second parallel runway.
Yeah.
And so, and there's, FAA requires, I think, maximum height is 60 feet for a tower, but that's also based upon the distance from the end of the runway and stuff. So that would be the only challenge I would see in terms of being located there.
They did look at, Washington State Patrol's dispatch center is also in a runway path, and they have a tower out there, which would be similar to what we would need on our property. And when AdCom looked at that, they didn't see any concerns with what they have going on. So they, there's some assumptions that would be okay for us as well, so.
The difference is that the tower that the State Patrol has is not in the APZ for the runway that runs north-south, and you would be right in the APZ for the second runway. So that would be the difference in terms of proximity. But the property is just out there this weekend. I think the property adjacent to the State Patrol is for sale right now and stuff. So maybe that's a better opportunity for us. Okay.
Well, I thought, wasn't there, and I could have this wrong, but I thought there was discussion several years ago that if you ever expanded, it would be up next to Fire District 9, because they've got sort of the backup dispatch building or something, and they've got that large parcel, undeveloped parcel right next to it. Is that incorrect? I thought there were discussions around that.
There was a discussion of actually putting our what we call our backup center up there. We need to revamp our backup center. We're basically in a room a little bit about this size with several different agencies at this point, and ours there to take the calls. And it's very small, and it works in a pinch. It's what it's supposed to do, but having a larger space would be a lot more beneficial.
Okay.
So that was the discussion at that point.
Okay.
Was basically revamping our backup center up there.
Okay, not the full center.
Not the full center.
Okay.
So, and how do you anticipate paying for a new facility?
So we have in our reserves, we already have $14 million dedicated to that. We're also looking at a new CAD system, and we've got money dedicated for that. But we have $14 million based on our tax dollars that we've put aside for this. We estimate at this point it's going to be about a $25 million project, and that's just a loose estimate based on what we know today, not having a whole lot invested in it. And so we anticipate that over the next few years, between budgeting and possibly having to take out some loans, that we can get that accomplished. So we're at a good starting point. We definitely have a lot more money to try to get in. I'll add that with that new facility comes new equipment too, and that's part of that $25 million. It's a new phone system that we're due to get soon. It's new radio equipment, new consoles, things like that. So we're wrapping all of that into one large project.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I just want to say congratulations. I think that's great that City Fire's coming over. We told them from the start it was the best move. And actually, when you were talking about all in $2 million, when they do this, it's going to be about $1 million. So that $1 million difference, I believe, was the exact number that David Condon at the city was saying. This will cost the city an extra $1 million a year if they don't do it. So, a great "I told you so" a couple of years later. That's great.
I won't say it, but you guys
I will, because we told them so. So, great work.
Yeah, and you've shown them that your call time is lower, and the fees for service to the other agencies are lower. Everybody kept, when it first started, the city was trying to say, oh, that can't be, it's not going to happen, and look at what you guys have done. And so, I'd actually, if you could give us just a quick, sheet to say, here's what's happened over, since you guys have started, because you were a startup, and I know initially you kept all the fees at the same rate, user fees, just so you could get your feet wet and understand all of that. But I'd like to see how much they've come down, and then how the call times have improved.
Sure. So we're happy to provide that. We'll get that to you guys.
Because I think that's, because it was really the commissioners that made the decision to go ahead and really forge ahead. And, that's something that's really important for, we all felt for the community. So, and hopefully Cheney may come along. I know there's been a change out there, so hopefully we'll start to see, the cheating, because I think that's the thing that's why the fire chief from the valley, and Chief Asmus, from Liberty Lake, I mean, they had seen it in other locations, and when they came here, they were just like, why are we still doing this? We've got to all be together. So I think this is just a great showing of what happens.
Yeah, it is, and I will say I'm very grateful to you guys as commissioners for the support that you've provided us. It's always nice knowing that you believe in us and that we're moving forward and doing what you saw as your vision, and it's the right thing to do. So I will say, as an agency, we're very grateful for the support that we get from you, and what's shared with us from Scott on your behalf is very, very nice to hear at times. So thank you for that. And you always ask me if I like the setup of my board, and I love the setup of my board. I'm very grateful for my board. They're very supportive, and they're very engaged, and oftentimes if I need direction, they're quick to give me suggestions, and it's been a really great experience. So thank you.
And I think that subject matter expert, they're the ones that know what is happening and what is going on. So
it directly impacts them.
Important.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are a very engaged board, and not surprisingly, because they are right in the thick of public safety, and emergency communications is very critical for their success as well. I'll also add too that not unlike the county, SHREC is subject to audit by the state auditor's office. And so they've been providing audits over SHREC for many years. We're in the middle of one right now.
We are.
And each of the previous audits have been very positive. They look at the utilization of the 1/10 and making sure that they're within the statutory guidelines of it. And SHREC has always received a positive, clean opinion back from the auditor's office, which is another testament to not only their operational model, but also their financial stewardship and how they're operating it, and with the guidance from the board as well. So both Lori and Kim do a phenomenal job for the group out there.
Well, thank you. Thank you for coming and presenting.
Thank you for having us. I'll leave these for you. That's just what our call volume has been in, and then our EMD numbers, our hands to chest, things like that, just for your own benefit. And we'll get you some more information.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
Nice job.
I guess we're going to transition to Matt. We'll have you go ahead and move over.
And I think Matt Koza is also on the line and might have something he wants to share too.
Great.
This is kind of a quick item. Just wanted to give the board some visibility. We were approached by Jen Van Lobenzels with Mount Spokane. They have an interest. We the county have a piece of property at Fort Irwin Highway 206 that we put in a staging area for our maintenance folks where they park equipment. We fenced it, put some lighting in, did some improvements in terms of grading it and putting grindings down, just kind of a temporary surface. And we use it for our winter ops primarily. We'll park equipment there in the winter. We have sand and salt piles, and also some ice slicers. So we've been using it for a few years now, and they saw an opportunity there, they being Mount Spokane, to possibly use that site, if we were agreeable to it, for a shuttle service up to Mount Spokane in the wintertime, and also the summertime potentially. They have, if you've ever been up there, that's pretty tight on parking, and they would like to maybe have employees park there, also offer a place where parents could maybe meet a bus and put kids on a bus to go up to Mount Spokane, or folks that aren't comfortable driving up the hill could meet there and then take a shuttle up to Mount Spokane, kind of help alleviate some of their parking issues. And, that conversation had gone around. Steve Bartell had one of his risk management folks go out and take a look at the site and make a recommendation. They didn't see any excessive exposure and were agreeable to the idea. The next step was to come up with an agreement, if the board was agreeable to letting them use that property. We proposed 1 year, kind of a temporary setup, just to see if it worked for them and if they want to pursue it further before they make a bunch of infrastructure type improvements, because eventually they'll probably want to surface the parking lot and put in parking stops and better signage and a lot of things potentially, if it takes off and it's a good thing for them. But initially, we just wanted to see if it worked for us and worked for them. So in front of you today, I think Matt's taken a look at, or given us kind of a template agreement that we can look at and see if it's something that would work for the board. It came through Commissioner Kern's office, but I don't believe anybody else has any visibility on it. So just wanted to come before you today and let you know that this was something that was being considered and see if the board was agreeable.
Do you have a picture of the property?
I don't have anything, to be honest. I got this email like 15 minutes ago. I was off Friday, so I don't have a picture. Matt, do you have a picture of it by chance?
I can pull up the parcel number and share my screen if you give me just 1 minute. And in the meantime, I'll just fill it in. Matt hit all the major details here. I have drafted a potential site use agreement for Mount Spokane's review. So no action from the board today, but with the board's go ahead, I will send over agreement to Mount Spokane. And then once we've agreed on terms and they've given us our signature, then we will note this up for the board's approval next week or whenever Mount Spokane gets us their signature.
I'm just curious how big the property is and where our buildings are. And
Yeah, it's a strange little triangular shaped piece. We have one of those Y intersections with 206 where you can go one of two ways depending on whether you're trying to go westbound or eastbound onto 206. And so it created a large parcel that we've had for as long as I could tell. And it was good for us. It's a great location for staging. Yep, that's it right there. Yeah,
So I'm attempting to share my screen here.
if we can see it now.
Yep, we got it.
You good?
Yep.
And pursuant to the agreement, the Mount Spokane would have to get Public Works go ahead on any kind of improvements or alterations that they would make to the property. So that way they can make sure that they won't be doing anything that'll interfere with the county's work, and then the county would still be able to continue to use the property as we have been.
How many acres are part of that?
I'm gonna say a couple acres, and they're, if I remember right, they're only looking to use about 10,000 square feet. It's kind of a strip of parking that runs north-south along the east side of our fenced area.
Okay.
The rest of it on the aerial looks more usable than it actually is. When I went out there to take a look at it on the ground, the portion to the north and the west that they may want to use in the future would require more grading and more surfacing before it was really ready to go. 3 acres total. 3 acres, yeah.
So is it kind of the north corner?
It's really along that west side. You can see our area where our piles are. It's directly east of that. I'm sorry, not west. There's a strip, and conveniently it's about 60 feet wide, which is standard for nose-in parking, and a 24-foot wide drive aisle if you're doing commercial development. So it's a good width for using it for parking and running a bus through. So it should work well for an interim facility.
And we have, the piles are fenced, correct?
Correct, yeah, and there's lighting also, which, you know, will be helpful for their purposes too. And our gate is at the very southeast corner of the fenced area, and we just want to make it very clear, and we might even put in barriers just to make sure people aren't obstructing our ability to get in and out of our fenced yard.
So that property up there is probably zoned rural traditional, which is 5 acre minimum lot size. So it really, other than for us, you couldn't sell it to somebody as a third party and have them build a house on it because the parcel's too small and stuff. So really the only real use out of that is what we're using it for.
Yeah, and Scott Chesney, our planning director, also took a look at it and thought it was fine to use for what they were intending to do. He didn't have any zoning issues with it.
Matt, I'm noticing one potential little long-term issue we have right there. That doesn't appear to be right away where the road is.
Yeah, I wouldn't trust that map. The map I look at shows it as right away, but we could research that more and make sure. And honestly, we've had it so long. Yeah, we have it through adverse possession anyway.
Yeah, probably just
the rights.
error on the GIS map. I'm shocked if that wasn't dedicated.
Yeah. So anyway, seems like a good use, seems like a good community benefit, but really wanted to make sure the board was agreeable to it before we proceed any further.
Yeah, fine.
All right, thank you. This will be on your consent agenda as soon as we have Mount Spokane signature then.
So do you just do it like a license agreement where?
This will be a site use agreement. So really their only rights to the property are to use it for parking and parking related services. They can't exclude us or anyone else from the property. They can't do anything with without asking us, and we can still use it for exactly the way we have been using it. So it's,
And then if
they may be splitting hairs whether we call it a license or a site use agreement, but it's just allowing them to use this property for parking services.
And then if we need it in the future, it's still ours.
That's correct.
Okay.
Well, and I would like to just have it be for 1 year. If for some reason this doesn't work for us or doesn't work for them, we don't want to be tied into a longer agreement initially. And like we discussed, I suspect it will work well for them and likely be fine for us. And they're going to want to expand the use. So I don't see tying it up with a longer agreement until we really understand how it's going to work for both parties.
Okay. Good. I would think a 1 year agreement too would be a good thing to just see how it works and all of that.
Yeah, and sorry for the last minute. They came to us just a couple weeks ago and wanted to pursue this, and they obviously are trying to get ready for the ski season, and their board only meets monthly and trying to get all the dominoes to fall in place. But appreciate your patience with this, getting it on so quickly.
Again, thank you.
So can I raise another issue? And you might or might not be familiar with this. I know that the sheriff's office has been working, and code enforcement has been working evidently down in Spangle. There is a operation, rock crushing operation, and the trucks are destroying our county roads, as it's been reported to me. I have not had an opportunity recently to take a look at it. I did earlier in the summer, and they got a lot of heavy traffic on the road and stuff. And so, but now I just got a text this morning about hours of operation and noise and destroying the road and everything. So could you have maybe one of the folks in the crew go down there and take a look at that and make sure that, if they are destroying the road because they're driving over overweight vehicles or something like that, we've got something that we can do to deal with, the damage to the road. But the other thing is, noise and all that kind of stuff. I know that, rock operations have got some flexibility with their operations, but I don't know that it's to the detriment of the neighborhood around them.
No, be happy to follow up.
Okay.
Want to forward that information. We
Yeah.
generally, with an operation like that, we'll do a haul road agreement, they're called, and
Yeah.
we'll go out and survey the road ahead of it. And then if there's damage to the road during the operation, we can follow up with them and find some kind of mitigation for that. So it is helpful to know about that.
I'll send you the text.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
It's gonna take us to Jeff Morris and Arian. So I see Mike Burgess is on. Do you wanna start there or
Yeah, we can start with
Or do
the
you wanna-
legislative agenda since Mike's here, that's fine.
how long?
Ledge first.
Sure.
So tomorrow is our cutoff for submitting ideas to GSI for their legislative agenda. And traditionally, this also serves as a way for us to start corralling our ideas for our own legislative agenda. So a couple items that have come up in conversations just to kind of jumpstart this. We have 2 items that have been brought up around more of a policy change at the state level. And one of those would be to keep natural gas energy as an option, both commercially and residentially. So I'll be sending some language around for you guys to look at around that one. Another area that I'll send around some language for you guys to wordsmith is the regulation on developers, which has stopped condo development. Just there's so much regulatory burden there right now that for effective purpose, we're not getting new condo developments, which is often the entry level way for people to get into home ownership. So I'll send some language around on that one. So those on the policy side. Then there's also just the direct financial ask side. And the one I'll start it with is the, we have the building across the street for public health that you guys have put about 1.4 million into some upgrades. There was quite a bit left on the table in the needs department around that building, the energy assessment ADA. So that's one you guys might want to consider. Maybe that would be a good regional ask. So I'll mention those three just to kind of jumpstart the conversation. Wanted to see if you had other thoughts or ideas you would like me to research and kind of run the trap lines on. And then Mike, if he has some ideas also. I know he's compiling stuff for the state agenda, but there might be something there for our own state agenda, but there might be something there that would be good to try to piggyback with GSI also. Do you have anything to add at this point, Mike?
No, thanks, commissioners. Jeff just asked me to jump on. I was curious to listen to the discussion about GSI. As Jeff mentioned, I'm still putting together, the agenda for the county based on the comments and conversations I've had with you all over the last few months. We'll do that in the coming weeks. The one reference there on the natural gas, that is something that you all have, that we took positions on in years past. So that one's, would seem to me to make sense for sure, but none of those things sound bad. I think they're all worthy. But that one in particular, you all have expressed interest in that issue in past legislative sessions.
And the natural gas was also a plank in last year's GSI, so that would be a continuation of that particular issue.
But for a capital ask, the roof at the fair.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a community resource. I think
Yeah, I mean,
one everybody should get behind.
Worst they can do is say no.
Exactly.
So.
Would we, if we're talking about capital ask, would we add the communications that we just heard about this morning? The $10 million, start closing the gap on that. I don't know. That's a regional program.
If I may, they've been approached as a backup center for the state as well, so that might be another reason for them to have some
And then, do we want to do anything with regard to having the state address the childcare industry? That's a soft issue, but I mean, that's something that might appeal to some of the folks in Olympia.
And I think there's supposed to be some, like 2025 is when
Something's happening.
the state is supposed to be trying to help fund that. And I don't know why that's the trigger, but Mike, I don't know if you know.
I don't, Commissioner, sorry. I was muted there.
I believe they're changing the financial level of who is eligible, which will open up childcare options for additional people. That's based on some of the conversations Arian and I and some of the commissioners have had with those in the industry.
I mean, I think the other thing that we need to really take a look at is the senior exemption levels
For the property tax.
for property taxes.
Yeah.
As well as I think if this, for the stadium project, if that's gonna be requesting state funds, and everyone's gonna need to have it on their agendas from a regional perspective.
Yeah, and with the property tax, I think, because I had reached out to Tom Konis on it, and I don't know if it's necessarily raising the dollar amount, but adjusting the percentage of the median income. So I mean, there's multiple, like
Right.
40,000 is the floor, but it's based on, I believe, 65% of the median household income of the county. So whether they raise that floor or whether they raise that percentage or something, or adjust that percentage.
Which is why some of the bigger
one or the
counties
other.
have.
They are above 40.
Yeah, they are above 40.
Yeah.
So, so I think we've got to look at what's the equitable
So there are multiple ways to do it.
Yeah,
But that is controlled at the state level.
Correct.
I mean, we don't have
Correct.
any legal
No control
authority to
over it.
adjust that at
For a
all.
lot of people this year that think it's us,
Yeah,
but it's
yeah.
not.
yes.
including my opponent.
Mine too.
But we're happy to advocate for the state to change it.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah. I said that out loud.
So,
So I got those notes. Anything else to throw on the brainstorming board here? Now I'll get these written up with some short little blurbs to send around for wordsmithing, and then whatever gets decided, we'll send over to GSI. The GSI process is tomorrow is submit everything, and then they have their committee process that will go through and vet what they want to promote as a board. So it's not just because we say we like it, it doesn't necessarily mean it will be on that agenda. But this also helps us get our own personal county agenda ready to go. So.
I mean, anything around GMA that makes it not as strict was, I mean, we're in a housing crunch and it's not just us, it's everywhere. So, I mean, you would think if any year there'd be some appetite to look at Growth Management Act. It would have been last year, the year before, but next year too.
We'll get it. And then once we get a draft from GSI to kind of see what's in, what's out from their leadership perspective, it'll come back before you guys to look at and formally take a position on. Yeah. Anything else on that before we pivot to ARP?
So I've got one question. The state legislature increased gas tax for, I think it becomes effective January 1, the new tax rate.
A carbon tax,
Carbon
not
tax,
a gas
I'm sorry,
tax.
carbon
Oh.
tax.
On
I
gas.
apologize
On
for.
gas, but not a gas. A carbon tax that will increase the tax on gas, but it's not a gas tax.
but they wait till after the election to do that.
I apologize for my nomenclature. The question is, I've heard that two things. It's either going to increase the cost per gallon by 45 cents, or it's going to increase the cost of the tax to 45 cents. Do either one of you know which one is accurate and,
I've heard.
Commissioner, I could try.
okay?
So, there's actually probably two different items. There's the low carbon fuel standard, which talks about obviously carbon levels in fuel. And that is projected to increase the cost of gas. Now, careful quoting me here, but I've seen the numbers that I think that you mentioned, Commissioner, in the 40-cent range. And I think that's based off of what happened in California, but please don't quote me on that number. I'm pulling that out of the air because I think I'd read the same thing you had. But then there's also the impact of the state's cap and trade policy that will increase. There are projections that will increase the cost of gasoline. You ask a good question then, because if that's built into the base, it doesn't matter though, because the gas tax is just an additive tax amount. It's not a percentage. So it doesn't directly increase the state's gas tax, but the theory is that it will increase the cost of gas.
Yeah.
Does that help, or did that just make it more confusing?
Well, yeah, it increased the cost of gas at the pump by
Right.
45 cents a gallon is the number that I keep on hearing, but
I think it could be more than, I think, like Mike's saying, there's two things
yeah,
that I think cap and trade is gonna be, it's on the suppliers and on the refineries and all of that. So we don't know what the actual increase that they're gonna be putting
So
to
it'll be
the
a
gas
passed down,
That
that
will
would
get
be a
passed
hidden
down.
tax.
But
in
it's
addition to the tax. the
right,
carbon
but because
tax.
there isn't the sales tax on gas, there's not that percentage increase. If that makes sense. The gas tax rate is a flat rate amount. But what you're talking, it'll be embedded in the price. So I'm probably just making that more confusing, but you're correct in your understanding.
Okay.
So we won't really know until January what the reality is
What the
really
new
gonna
rate will
be.
be.
Well, the low carbon fuel requirements kick in later this year. And there, I think there's a possibility that, you know, depending on the rhetoric that you read and believe, that the prices for that could increase, you know, before the end of the year. Then on the cap and trade, ecology is now going through the rulemaking process. So that impact will be later, should be later anyway.
Well, it's a good thing to know that it didn't impact any of that $15 billion surplus they had. I'm glad for that. Rhetorical.
If there's one silver lining,
If there's one silver lining, yeah. Gosh.
You know, it's been, let's see, this
People into homelessness.
seems like there was something else I just thought of, but I can't.
If you guys think of other things, just send them my way and we'll get the list compiled. Mike will be back on November 7th for a first look at the county agenda. And then we do need, though, whatever we send to GSI, we have about a 24-hour window on that one, as far as getting stuff on that particular, at least on the buffet of what they look at.
And have they talked much at GSI about what they're looking at?
No, at the last meeting, they just said they're working on it, but they've not brought forward anything that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Jared, are you tied in with this still?
No.
No, okay. I just know years past you were
Yeah.
at some of those
Once
meetings.
Jeff came on, handed that over to him.
Okay.
I'll help wordsmith when the time is right, but.
Oh, I know. What about police reform?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, that affects the entire community, so
Yeah.
that was.
Pursuit.
Yeah.
Pursuit bill. Repeal.
I mean, just exactly like what, you know, we were talking about, Alan was talking about in King County, because if that starts to really happen, I mean, that's,
Some real issues there.
so.
Okay, well, we've got 8-9 things here, and we'll get those typed up and we'll get the wordsmithing going and send them out tomorrow. Thank you, Mike. So with that, we'll pivot over to ARP. Tomorrow on your consent agenda, you'll see the affordable housing category is there for your consideration. There are 5 projects. It does total, originally you'd put $4,500,000 into the category. This list totals $6,381,799. So it will require an addition of about 1.88 million to the pot, which leaves your unallocated portion, if it passes, at about 4.6 million that's not in a category to date.
And how does that, I guess I'm on the other things that, you know, we deferred some items out of the nonprofit to other groups.
So
And how are those gonna be affected in, I mean, are we gonna have enough money to fund all these different?
So in the nonprofits, multiple, I'm gonna say, 7 or 8 projects came from nonprofit to affordable housing. We also, this last week, have scored the community violence intervention category and the tourism, travel, hospitality category. And there's probably a dozen or so projects between those 2 categories that came from nonprofit because they were better fitted to the more direct category. So all in all, I'd say at least 20, if not 25 of the nonprofit applications did resubmit, which just made you go to the drop-down box and change your category. They could also make changes if they wanted, that was their choice. If they didn't make any changes, they could just change categories.
But how's the funding for those buckets?
We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Housing was the only one we expect in addition
Okay,
to the directed balance. So if that answers your
that
question.
answers my question,
And
thank you.
this 1.8 is actually kind of a soft 1.8 because the bottom recommended firm is actually also in consideration for a completely separate funding source called ARP Home. And once we have feedback from HUD, that firm may be contracted with out of that source, which would leave this actually under. So we're kind of, it's one of those where it could be a net zero amount, but all of the others, we stayed within the original direction.
Okay.
After,
Thank you.
affordable housing is the last one that we've presenting that actually goes over. Going forward, our plan has been to, even if we partially fund, to bring a recommendation that forces it to the budget, and then just give the board the running tally of, this is how much money is left. Here are your numbers. If you want to go over, you make that decision at the board level.
Okay,
As we go forward.
great, thank you. That was,
So,
yeah.
sorry, I wasn't catching your question as quickly there as I should have. So the 5 in affordable housing that you'll see on consent tomorrow, one is Fire District 10, which wants to do affordable housing for their volunteer firefighters. They're having a hard time getting volunteer firefighters, and it'd be a way for them to provide some housing, particularly for younger firefighters while they are in college, getting vocational skills, what have you. Habitat for Humanity is, that would be home ownership through Habitat for Humanity, so it's 36 units of housing. And that would be done in a way that if the original homeowner sells, some of that subsidy moves forward to keep the houses in affordable housing in perpetuity. The Spokane Housing Authority submitted a project for the Haifuni Inn, if I'm saying that correctly. It's an 86 unit expansion. They asked for 2 million, we're recommending 1.5. That is one we're recommending not to go because the number was getting high enough. We needed to find some areas there. Family Promise has 18 units. It's more of a remodel, repurpose, get them back on the street. So that's a 181,000 ask. That's a smaller one. We weren't able to fully fund it. About 18,000 of their ask was not ARP eligible. So it is a full funding of what's allowed. And then the last one is the VOA crosswalk at 2 million, which Arian already said there's another possible funding source, but it did score well for this source also. So it'll be a month, 6 weeks before we know the other funding source. I did connect with VOA last week. Their financial timeline is early 2023. So we should have an answer on funding source options well before they need the funds. And as Arian said, if we don't end up funding that one out of this, we actually have 120,000 left on the table that you could reallocate in this category or reallocate to a different category, cross that bridge when and if we get there.
And Jeff, the ARP home public comment period ends tomorrow. So that is when we will compile through CAT what we will be sending to HUD, and that's the start time when we can expect that response. So
that particular pot of money, we have to hear back from HUD on whether they approve the plan or not. So that one's out of our hands. The other two categories, which you'll see a week from tomorrow, if everything goes as planned this week, will be the travel, tourism, and hospitality category, which is a $2 million category, and the community violence interventions, which is a $5 million category. The scoring committees have met. We have preliminary. We're not ready to present that though because we're doing some follow-up interviews to get some answers to questions that the committee felt was needed. So once we get those clarifications, we'll bring that around, but we are hoping to do those two categories a week from tomorrow. And then we also have the other two categories which are currently open, the all of water sewer, 1 through 18, so anything inside water sewer, and as well as the neighborhood features amenities category, open space parks in layman's terms. Both of those close October 28th, and there's actually 22 million between those two categories. So that will be another big chunk of funds that will probably come before you guys early to mid-November.
Very good, thank you. And then any update on broadband?
I had two other quick things on ARP before we leave it. So this week we'll be finalizing our quarterly report for US Treasury that does have some expenditures. And then I did want to let you know we had the contacts for the ARP expenditures for all of the counties have kind of a subgroup in WASAC, and there's going to be an actual breakout of ARP at the WASAC Leader Conference in November. So that's something that anyone from those subgroups, if they'd like to attend and be a part of that, their conference fee will be waived. So we wanted you guys to be aware of that. If you'd like Spokane to be part of that, either through Jeff or I. So that was very fascinating to see where we're standing amongst our peers and how we're rolling things out. So we can give you some more information on that, but I thought that was an interesting dialogue. So that was it on ARP. Yes, broadband. I had the pleasure of sharing with the S3R3 PDA last week that has not only interest from that board, but also the airport board, nearby Tribal, as well as Airway Heights, that are all trying to weave in solutions with broadband along with ARP opportunity. So that was really a pleasure to share with them. Wanted to make sure that all of the PDAs like Northeast PDA know that that's an opportunity we can share with them as well, because there are a number of threads to pull that can be braided with broadband and other economic development opportunities. There is a broadband action team meeting this Wednesday. It will be at the Valley Chambers. We are hoping that Airway Heights is going to be able to share the summary of their CURB award for broadband feasibility study. We were able to share ours last week, and it was quite well received. And then also have Better Health Together share some of what the Digital Navigator $500,000 award means as they start to roll out. We received a forward through your office, Commissioner CUNY, about some questions on the Spokane Trends website related to broadband indicators that is issued by Patrick Jones with EWU. And I'd like to recommend or suggest that we get in touch with him so that he uses as his indicators our recently published digital equity story map, because it not only has census data, it has GIS data, and really shows a little bit more than I think what we had previously available, that would be our preference for how things show. But I wanted to run that by the three of you before we did that.
Just all how we're showing the data.
It is, and this is, I would say, takes the robustness of what citizens can see to a whole other level. And fortunately, is no work for him. It's just a redirect under that category for some investments that we've done. So I think that might help alleviate some confusion, but I just wanted to make sure before we did that, I confirmed that with you. I did find out as part of our conversations with Comcast, who is a awardee for the Broadband Other, that the county franchise agreement for Comcast is currently under negotiations, and I think will be really helpful for us to look at in light of what we're doing regionally in broadband, because there are some opportunities and areas that we want to make sure align well with the franchise agreement inside the county at large, as far as who's owning what within that agreement. So reached out to Public Works on that, and we'll just kind of try to keep that in cadence so that we can maximize both sides.
Yeah, I think with broadband, I mean, we've seen that there's a lot of interest in broadband and a lot of confusion in broadband and a lot of people holding things tight. And so I think with the broadband action team, it's really bringing to light kind of all the different needs, and that if some of these things are the county as a whole requesting, or being the lead on the grants, the entities all have to come through, that we all need to be aware of what's going on. And so the broadband action team has really been a great place, and I think we're on the kind of the leading edge of counties. There's several counties that are doing it well, and a lot of them aren't even doing it yet. So Spokane County is actually leading the way on the broadband action team and making sure we're doing it as a region.
Yakima County Commissioner just reached out, so we're going to share with them our journey to date to hopefully help them out and what they're doing as well. So it was very interesting. Last but not least, thanks to Mark McLean and Jim Micio and Scott, we've taken some past constructs for public development authorities, so that when we do have publicly owned assets, how are we going to manage those? And the most similar, ironically enough, is the SHREC as a service-based PDA. However, there are going to be some aspects of our other economic PDAs that will be blended into this one because of the formulas, almost reverse formulas, where it will be going out to the municipalities versus into the PDAs from the subscriber. So Jim and Mark and Scott, they're looking at kind of that real first touch board construct. We're also looking at some branding and identity. That was the fun part of this weekend, so that it's not a blasé name, which is what's in there right now. So that as it comes before you, we can start looking at what presence does it need, not only for assets, but because digital equity is, I think, going to forever be tied to this, that it can represent space in that part of the discussion as well. So we hope to have that before you in the next little while. Fun stuff.
Yeah, and I think if you could add Betsy Wilkerson from the City of Spokane Council.
She and Brian are both on it, but routinely seem to have,
team?
have conflicts.
Okay.
I can reissue that, but
Yeah, just because she was asking me questions on the digital equity side of things, and so
I can reach out again. They do get the minutes and the agendas, but they both have acknowledged that unfortunately they have conflicts.
Okay.
But I'll reach out again.
Thank you. Okay. We're way behind schedule. Sorry, ladies. Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions for Arian or Jeff? Okay,
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, Gary, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you introduce your guests for the record.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners. We have with us today Stacy Lewis and Deanna Gregory with Pacifica Law Group, and also Mr. Roy Kogan. And if we want to start with the SAR bond briefing, we can, or we can go into a quick snapshot of the third quarter financial report.
Choice is yours.
Why don't we just start with the third quarter financial report and just some high-level takeaways. Tessa, I think, has provided everyone with a copy of the memorandum and the two-page summarization of where we're at for the first year-to-date, first 3 quarters. Main takeaway is that the general fund is doing very well. We do have some strong showings in both our revenue accounts of property tax collections and sales tax collections, running well ahead of budget. We are showing a surplus at the end of the 3 quarters in our general fund of approximately 1.2 million, which is a little bit unusual because, as you well know, we don't get the second half of property taxes collected until October. So, and the reason why we do have a little bit of a surplus is because we have taken some indirect cost from the ARP funds into the general fund at this point on a rateable basis for the contracts that have been awarded. So those are some of the high level takeaways. On the expenditure side, we are only spent about 66% out of a rateable 75%. And a lot of our expenditures, of course, as you well know, in the general fund are salaries, wages, personnel. So those are a rateable type of expenditure. So we're doing well on the expenditure side of things too. Tessa, I'll turn it over to you for any more of the specifics that you'd like to impart.
Yeah, I will make a note that our capital is underspent for the year, and a large portion of that is the sheriff's vehicles. There has been a delay in board processing our order, and we may not receive those vehicles until next year. So we won't be spending those funds until next year, most likely, for our 2022 order.
Can you reserve for those?
Yes, yep. So yeah, we have them ordered and we have a PO. We're encumbered to spend the funds. We just don't actually see the cash flow going out this year.
Okay.
It's one of our biggest pieces.
So that's cash flow versus accrual.
Right. Yep.
So is this information then on cash basis?
Yeah. And we are still watching our major labor contracts that settled this year. So we had both law enforcement and detention settle. And so we're tracking those to see if we'll need to make a budget amendment for salaries for the last bit of the year. as overtime costs are high in both of those groups as well this year.
And we can also delve deeper into this as we get into some of our budget workshops going forward, because now we have some data that we can compare against as we're assessing certain requests, both in the supplemental M&O type of requests, personnel requests, and later on the capital requests.
Any other questions for Carrie or Tess on this? Thank you.
So if we want to move into the SAR bonding brief, I'll turn it over to Deanna and Stacy.
Hi, good morning. It's so great to see everybody again. The last time I was here, we considered the bond resolution, and I'm happy to say the bonds were sold. And we're moving forward to a closing on Thursday. The market, I can't sugarcoat it, the market is tough. But the county hit it at the right time, and I know there's financial results in front of you in your draft closing memorandum as part of your packet. But the good news is that all things considered, the county did hit it at the right time and rallied. The market rallied, and so we came in with an all-in true interest cost of just over 4.43%. For the Series A piece, if you recall, the bonds were sold in two separate series, so a tax-exempt and a taxable piece. The county's 20-year piece came in with a true interest cost of 4.157. So as we know, interest rates have continued to rise since then, even today. And so it has been a tough market, but like I said, we did hit it at the right time. The Series B bonds, the taxable bonds, are a bit higher, of course, because they're taxable at 4.959 of the all-in true interest costs, and those are a 10-year bond. From here, the next step is Stacy and I are here with a packet of documents. We came armed with paper to have the documents signed up early this afternoon, and then we'll get everything prepared and set to coordinate with the rest of the financing team to bring us to a closing on Thursday, which is when you'll get the wires. So that's the bond sale in a nutshell. If you have any questions.
Yeah, so for some reason, we don't have the information.
We just got the signed off memo this morning, and I just forwarded it to Gina, so she's
okay.
running it right now.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good. No, I think, Scott and I were back there, and we were anticipating it could have been over 5%, and so we were happy that at the date and time that we were doing it, that we were able to get it, keep it under that, and we knew the taxable was going to be a higher rate than the non-taxable, but super excited with the rate on the non-taxable to be where it was at, and then you said to stay under 5. I think we're feeling pretty good.
Yeah, I think Barclays had indicated that the week before we were there, they had a AAA bond rated, I think it was a water entity out of, public water entity out of Texas, who got priced at 5.25%, if I'm remembering right. So it was, we did kind of hit it at that little bit of a trough, and even the 2 days before we were there, interest rates were going down, and then the day we were pricing, they were starting to climb again. So it was very fortuitous having that reference of the higher bond rated entity having higher interest rates than we got. I think it was very good timing for us.
So the closed memo that was just passed out outlines the steps that will be taken between now and Thursday, really. So the wires that will happen on the day of closing, the necessary documents, as well as the pricing results. So you have all that at your fingertips. So congratulations. It's Thursday, so I'm knocking some wood, but congratulations. And yes, we do anticipate that dip in the market. I don't know what you guys did, but good job. And been a really big pleasure working with this team on this financing. We're excited to see it get built and everything happen. I know it's been a long time in the works.
Yes, it has. Thank you, because, working with you new, as our new bond counsel, it's like, thank you very much for all the work and, I know you guys were very receptive to any of the calls that came in and all of that, so thank you, and, you still gotta work with Roy a little bit.
We can talk about that later.
Exactly.
Just kidding.
So, based upon, because refresh my memory, aren't we using REIT funds to cover the debt service on this?
Yep.
So based upon what we budgeted and now what we know to be the actual debt service, are we above, below, right on in terms of what we were anticipating having to spend for debt service and what we're actually having to spend?
With our $10 million cash buy down, I think that was our biggest asset that we contributed. That has kept our REIT debt service right where we anticipate it to be.
Okay, good.
So we kind of just are squeaking by the skin of our teeth right now. So that was
And
good.
so as you come forward with us for where we're at on REIT and the availability.
Yep.
Because one of these is a 10-year, one's a 20.
Yep. And so we have the Air Force portion for the 10-year payment.
Right.
And then, the county 20-year portion is the REIT. And we'll see that, as one of our booked uses now of REIT 1 into the future for the next 20 years.
Great.
So, but with the Air Force's 10-year portion, we're still a portion of that. So I guess, that's where I just want to make sure on the REIT schedule that we're seeing all of that specifically.
Mm-hmm.
And we can show any gap that we had when we were anticipating what the cost of REIT would be on the Air Force portion too versus what it actually ends up based upon the bond process.
Okay, great.
How did we pick the timeline on when to do the bond sale? I mean, because I think it was like month and a half ago, we made the decision to buy it down 10 million. And then, I mean, how did we pick the date to do, I mean, with interest rates fluctuating, how did we select the date that everybody went over there and actually made the
I
sale?
can say part of that.
I was gonna say.
Part of it was timing on everybody's part. Like, I didn't want to go the week of the state of the county
Okay,
address, so that was part of why we chose the first week of October.
okay,
But it was also when the Federal Reserve met, we didn't want to be too close to that, so there was timing there. So it's all not magic, but it's all kind of a timing of when everything is going on. Partly, the week we were there was good because it was just before the new releases were coming out on unemployment and on inflation. So those were coming out later in the week before we sold. We sold before that. So and that's where Barclays does a great job of kind of anticipating what they think market changes will be driven by and when they're more stable. And so that was part of it.
There's a very intricate calendar. I can't speak for the underwriting team, but there's a very intricate calendar that the underwriting team keeps, as well as your municipal advisor, so Scott Bauer. And it is a bit of magic, but it's also a bit of keeping an eye on when these big decisions are made and big announcements come through, and just keeping an eye on what else is in the market. And it's that careful attention to all of those little details, and then just trying to time it with a little bit of magic as best as I can.
And Josh, it was also around the Fed announcement.
Yes.
About a week before. We didn't want to be week before that or a week after that.
okay.
I'd like to say the lawyers had something to do with it, but we don't.
Okay.
Full credit.
But yeah, no, Barclays, Sean and Scott Bauer from, the municipal advisors, I mean, they were paying attention and trying to figure out what they thought was going to be some of the best dates to do it. Okay, any other questions?
Congrats, and
Thank you.
thank you.
Looks like I'll be signing some.
I was gonna say, so we'll see you in a couple hours, and get your hands ready, and we'll go from there.
Perfect, great. Thank you. Okay, then now it's gonna take us to Ken Moore. I think, okay.
Scott. I was talking to Al about scheduling something for the 20th. Got something scheduled for Mary and for Josh for a briefing. But Al said he'd like to have something Thursday morning. He didn't know what your schedule looked like.
I'll make it work.
Okay.
Let me just check here. Friday, I'm gonna be buried all day in that building code council meeting. On Thursday, I could probably do 3:30.
Oh,
Yeah, that's, I got airport board meeting in the morning and then groundbreaking ceremony and stuff, so then we got STA, so the earliest I got is 3:30.
Scott, will that work?
Yep.
Okay.
So I'm meeting with him at 3, but you bring up the groundbreaking. So we have an STA workshop.
Right.
I'm not sure. So they're at the same time. So, something's got to give. You're going to do the groundbreaking?
Do the groundbreaking. I'm the longest serving board member on the airport for this Trex project, and I clearly need to be there.
Okay.
And stuff. So
And I'm gonna go out there.
Okay. All right. Maybe I'll go out.
You're going to be out there too, because our calendar just has it doesn't have to being out there and stuff. So.
And now it will.
So then we'll need to adjust
Yeah,
that.
the weekly.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll probably,
So
Ron,
probably
can you forward, Ron will forward you the info.
the STA workshop then will not have 2 commissioners.
So I know that Larry reached out to me about a speaking engagement and stuff. So is that?
I'm not speaking.
Oh, okay. Well, both of us can. It's not a big deal. I just want to make sure that he's got his agenda scheduled right.
Yeah, no, partly I was.
Yeah, you were going to be in Houston.
I was going to be in Houston.
Yeah.
And then with my niece passing away, her service is on Friday, so.
I'm sorry, I didn't know that.
I couldn't go then.
I'm sorry.
So just change things.
Okay.
So.
Yeah. Okay.
So I can, so then I'm able to do that, and I'm able to. There's
Sure.
a couple other things I can do now that I wasn't going to be able to attend.
Sure.
So.
Okay.
So yeah, so that was kind of last minute.
All right, so we're here to touch base again on the ERP project and the second stage of the GFOA consultant that's working with us on this project. So wanted to run through really quickly what phase 1 looked like, and then I'll go over phase 2 of the project. So Ken, do you want to run over what phase 1 entailed?
Yeah, and we've got a presentation up on the board there. You can see phase 1 again, about 5 different steps there, but kind of that initial analysis of our project, our potential project to move to a new ERP, reviewing our systems and processes, analyzing whether or not we're following best practice, and actual process flow mapping, which was a significant effort over many weeks with lots of people involved. And they output all of that stuff. We have that in our hands now. And it was just a terrific process. Developed some what they call PIT teams, process improvement teams, focused on different functional areas. And as a result of that, we were able to pull together about 1,600 different requirements for an RFP for an ERP system, which is a significant amount of effort in a very short period of time. So they kind of proved to us that they're worth the dollars that they're expending, because the output of that, if we had not had them, would have taken us, that might have been a year effort internal. So we got that done in about 3-4 months. And we were able to get the RFP out the door with them as well on 10/5. And we're waiting to hear back from vendors. Proposal response is due by 12/5. But in addition to that, preparing us for that proposal to be able to go out the door, they also prepared us for the process improvement effort, which is going to be a parallel that's happening right now, where we've actually got these process improvement teams working to clean up those processes so that we don't overlay old bad process into a new system. So that effort's underway right now, thanks to the folks at GFOA. And again, just our recommendation is we'd like to move forward more with this phase 2 effort. Maybe Tony wants to dip into that a little bit.
Yep, so phase 2 is approximately $85,000. You guys will see this on next week's agenda, but just a brief to let you guys know what this is before you see it. And this is what we're calling phase 2. So the RFP document is out to the public now, and part of the services from GFOA will be helping us really ask the right questions of the vendors during the interview. They'll help us to design the demo scripts so that when these vendors are showing us how their ERP system would work, we are looking at processes that actually pertain to us, and the vendors won't be able to really hide as much detail that might not work for us. So a lot of risk mitigation there. And beyond that, they'll also, once we do choose a vendor and award this, they'll be helping us with contract negotiations, really another risk mitigation strategy for us. It'll be worth its weight in gold to have somebody that's gone through this 100 times with government sector organizations and have them structure our contract, give us the right terms that we need to be successful long term.
And they've worked with the vendors too that are probably going to be bidding this on the RFP. So they've got both the experience from the government side and working with contracts with these same vendors, so they kind of know what the strengths and weaknesses are. So having them advise us in terms of a vendor selector, I think selection is really important.
Yep. And then the last, I think, part of what they'll be doing in phase 2 is they'll be subject matter experts on the evaluation team as we're going through. So we'll have an in-house expert to bounce questions and ideas off of when we're grading these things. So that is the scope of consulting services that we are looking at for phase 2 of this project. And that is funded out of its professional services.
We have some choices in terms of ultimate funding. We can front it, out of general fund, but there's still capacity, I think, to pay for this out of ARP funds through lost revenue replacement.
Okay. And so on the team, who's all on the team that is going to be looking at this?
The evaluation team.
Yeah, we're still kind of finalizing that. It's been a little challenging given that, a lot of the leads across the organization that we're working with on the HR and the financial side, their time is valuable. So we're trying to find some lieutenants that can step into those roles. But, we've got, for instance, Ashley Cowan, Tessa Sheldon. Who else are we pulling in, Gary?
And keep in mind, the due date for the return of the proposals is in early December. And so that's when that evaluation process would start with that selection committee.
Yeah. But we'll have stakeholders from every department needed. So IT, the auditor's office, everybody that we need will have a stake.
Okay. I guess as you develop that team, I would like to be aware.
Yep.
To make sure, just because again, coming from being the chief deputy auditor and understanding the accounting side of it and how decentralized we are right now and how we want to centralize. I just want to make sure that we've got everybody working in the same direction, that this is where everybody wants to go and not have it be, like I've said before, we've had several, software programs that have not worked. And I want to make sure that we're not going to be spending our money. We're going to be spending it wisely and making sure everybody's on board that this is how it's going to be working in the future.
One of the key aspects that are, the GFOA brought to, the forefront is having buy-in and having communications with all of the affected shareholders and stakeholders in the county so that no one feels left out of the process. Because that, in their estimation, was a breaking point for failed ERP implementations with what they've seen in the past. And so they definitely stress that we need to have input and communications with all departments.
That goes back to those pit teams we were talking about, functional area, groups of 5 to 10 people that are heavily involved day to day in processing, and then they're giving us their feedback on how this system should be configured and set up. So we absolutely have that built out, and we'll tap individuals from each of those groups to come in and help with this selection and then the eventual setup.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Great, well, you should see this on next week's agenda and we'll keep you guys updated.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now it's gonna take us to Scott, and I see Jessica Pilgrim has joined us. Like, we haven't seen Jessica live and in person for, I don't even know how long that is. Has it been that long?
I don't feel like it's been that long.
I think it has. So go ahead, Scott.
Got one miscellaneous item. So we have the new tourism promotion area being formulated for next year, which will include the county and the city of Spokane. Our current TPA is still operational. It's going to terminate at the end of this year, so that board is still in place. But we will need to have a new board that starts up for the next year's operation. In advance of that, what was raised to my attention is the budget development and adoption needs to be done this year, and the identification of the fiduciary who are going to have run this. And I'm anticipating, if it's still the direction of the board, that would be Visit Spokane, who's done this in the past for us. But we do need to have, I believe Commissioner Kearns is on the current TPA. So we just need to get some feedback on to who does the commission, who do the commissioners want to be from the three of you on the new TPA, because we'd like to have that meeting set up here in the near term so that they can take action on the budget for the TPA for next year. That's sufficiently confusing.
It would just make sense to leave Josh.
Okay, that will be helpful, and then we'll get the item on the consent agenda for that. So did we do that by consent? For the board appointment?
Well, traditionally,
Usually
it's
it's the
been done,
year.
yeah, it's been
Yeah.
done with all the other board, but it is a consent agenda item,
So we'll get
right?
that on I think so too, yeah. Okay. So we'll get that on the consent agenda for next week.
Anything else we want to shift out? Anybody want left? Not even a smirk.
Sorry, my time.
Okay, all right.
All right. That's the only miscellaneous I have, and I believe I'm aware of 2 executive session items that we have.
Okay.
We have 3.
Real estate.
Okay.
So why don't you state yours, and then we'll have Commissioner French state his.
We've got one for labor negotiations. That will be Ashley Cameron and Josh Grote. Ashley, how long do you believe we need?
Probably 15 minutes,
15 minutes.
and
With
no
the
action is required.
No action. With the commissioners, the senior leadership team, and Mark McLean. And then the other one is under pending potential. Is that correct?
Yes.
With the commissioners, Jessica Pilgrim, Scott Chesney. How long do you think that will take?
15 minutes?
15 minutes. Any action?
No.
No action as well. And then the senior leadership team.
And that'll include Mark McLean as well, right?
And Mark McLean.
Thank you.
Commissioner French?
Mine is real estate, about setting a real estate acquisition. And I don't anticipate a decision to be made, but I'm looking, yeah.
How long?
Oh, 5 minutes, very most.
Okay, 5 minutes, no action. And who all do you want in?
Just the team. Yeah.
And Mark McLean.
And Mark McLean.
Very good. Very good. Okay, we're going to go into executive session for 35 minutes is what I have. It is 10:42, so I'm going to say it's going to be 10:45 by the time we get into executive session. So 10:45. for 35 minutes for 3 items, labor negotiations, pending potential litigation, and real estate, of which all 3 of those have been discussed, and who will be in attendance by Scott Simmons and Commissioner French. So thank you. And then at that point, is there any other business that's going to come before the board?
Nope, nothing I'm aware of.
Okay, then at that point, we will adjourn for the day, or for the morning, and we will reconvene this afternoon at 2 o'clock for our working session agenda. Thank you, and we'll see you at 2 o'clock.